cool. Right, so what we're going to look at is Photoshop. We're going to look at cutting some images out and how we can do some fairly simple effects really, but quite effective things. We're going to move them onto another document. So it may just be that you want this image cut out and put into another document, say within INDESIGN or something with no background. Obviously we can change the colour of the background. We can also bring it in with other images, so we might do a bit of a montage, bring them into another document as well. Okay, but we're going to start with selections, and so I'm going to do the Photoshop's quite intuitive with these things these days. It used to be quite manual to cut things out, but say there's some really kind of automated things that we can do which are really effective. Okay, so I'm going to start with those. They're not always perfect, but I'm going to show you how we can tweak them around a little bit as well. Okay, so let's look at this image here. So I've got this image, so essentially first thing I want to do is kind of cut it out and remove the background. Okay, and if I get my layers here, okay, and try, so everything's kind of built around these layers really in Photoshop. Okay, and it's locked at the moment, so I'm just going to double click on that layer to click OK. Right, and now when we've got an image, I mean I've kind of chosen a relatively easy one here, look, because it's quite a nice contrast going around it. So the automated features should work pretty well in Photoshop. But say we can adjust those as well, which I can show you. So the easiest way to cut a photo out is to do what's called select subject. Okay, and it's generally like we've got a properties panel here and a layers panel, and we'll try and just utilize these both really. And 1 second. And so most of the stuff we're going to do is within these two panels. Okay, so I've got layers and I've got properties. Okay, once I start moving. Okay, so I've got the properties and the layers panel. I've unlocked my background layer, and within my properties here, so this is sensitive to what we're actually doing. Okay, a bit like the properties within InDesign. And if I go to select subject here, look, so it's available here. So select subject is what we're going to do. It's generally within the quick actions. Sometimes it's up here. There's a little button as well, depending what tool we've got selected over here. But if I go up to select, it's always there. Okay, so even if it's not in any of these other areas, it's always going to get it there. So I'm going to select subject, and it's going to identify the thing in the picture. And it's very intuitive, so even if I've got if I had two people in this picture, it kind of detect them both as well. Or if it was like a bit of furniture or something, it kind of identifies what the prominent thing is within the picture. So if I go to select subject here, and it should identify what's happening in the image. It's a bit slow this morning, but okay, you can see it's done a pretty good job going around this image here. Now I'm going to zoom in and just have a double check, because sometimes it's perfect and it is quite intelligent, so it does do a very good job, but we can tweak it around a bit as well. So if I zoom in this image, I can hold my space bar down, pull myself around to have a look, so I can look at any areas. I can see a little bit down there that needs tweaking. Okay, so you can see here it's just not picked that bit up because obviously the contrast isn't there. So the easy way to do this is we've got a lasso tool. Okay, and with the lasso tool we can add to the selection and we can subtract from the selection. Okay, so if I don't press any keys and I just try and use my lasso tool, it makes a brand new selection. Okay, and everything just sort of disappeared. So I don't want to do that. Okay, so I'm going to do Control and Z to go backwards to here. Okay, but if I use my lasso tool with a key, okay, and that key is going to be the Shift key. See, a little plus comes up next to my cursor. So with the Shift key pressed, I can kind of draw around here, look, and then do a big sweep, and it adds that little bit in. Okay, so I'll keep pressing Shift. Every time I press, as long as I'm pressing Shift, it'll add to the selection. Okay. So obviously we're making that, but we might also have areas that are extra. Okay, so I don't want this bit now. Okay, so it might have kind of come out a little bit. So as well as the Shift key, we can use the Alt key next to the spacebar, the ALT. If I press that, you can see a little minus comes up. So then I can do that and it will remove it. Okay. So using Shift and Alt is really key to getting your selection right. Okay. So I'll do select. So even if it's a bit ropey in lots of different areas, we can use this lasso tool to kind of fix it around here. Okay. So I've got my selection running around here. So I could just sort of copy and paste this or put it somewhere else. But the problem is it's going to be really sharp. Okay, it's going to look like I've cut it out with a pair of scissors or a scalpel or something. So we want to kind of make it look a bit more convincing. So when I've got a selection tool selected and I've got a selection running around an image, there's always a button there that says select and mask. Okay, and with this one I can refine this edge a little bit. Okay, so it's select and mask is up there when I've got a selection tool selected, but say if it's not up there, if I go to select, it's always there. Look, so select and mask. So I'm going to click on that one, and it kind of will open up a new sort of interface. Really, it kind of gets rid of all the panels. We've got a new window to look at, and it sort of previews what it's going to look like when it's cut out. Okay, so it looks pretty sharp around here. Now if I look down here, look, my properties panel's changed completely. Okay, so this is all to do with refining the edge around this image. Okay, so starting at the top, there's a bit that says view. Okay, so I can click on there. You can change the view that you like. Okay, personally I prefer it to be on layers, so you've got this transparency grid, so you know exactly what you can and can't see there. Okay. But let's come down here. I'm just going to concentrate on this part, which is the most useful part. We've got global refinements. Okay, so for keeping this quite simple today, for an image like this, this is the part we want to look at. So if I zoom in a little bit to my image again, let's come on here. So it's a good selection, but say very sharp. Now when we make selections as well, everything's made out of pixels. Okay, so all the pixels are square and it kind of goes around them, so sometimes the edge can be a little bit jaggedy. So it is a little bit there, I can see. So smoothing will sort of round off pixels essentially, so you don't get any square actions, you get a curved bit. So if I pull that up, you should see a little subtle difference here when I let go. Okay, so it's just slightly blurred them off a little bit there. So I don't want to do too much there. Okay. Now the next bit is feathering. Okay, so this again is going to be the amount of feathering you do is going to change depending on the image. Okay, so I probably won't want to do too much on this one, but I do want to kind of, so if I go a bit extreme there, look, so you can see what happens, and then let go, it kind of blurs the edge there, look, so I would never want to go that far, but let's say come up a little bit there. Okay, and you can see it's just slightly starting to blur the edge a bit, just so it doesn't give that sort of sharp, sort of scissors cut out kind of thing. Okay, we also have contrast. So this is kind of the opposite of what we're trying to achieve here. So we probably wouldn't use contrast because that's going to sharpen it up. Look, get the edge really, really sharp. Okay, so again, for an effect, you might want to do that. But say for us today, I'm looking at being a bit more natural with it. The shift edge, this is very useful because when I come in here, okay, what we can do is kind of choke the selection in a little bit. Okay, so sometimes, this one isn't too bad actually, but say you've got a bit of a reflection or the background still on there a bit. Okay, let's shift this edge. Again, if I go a bit extreme right the way in. Okay, and you can see it's coming a bit there. So again, probably not that far, I might want to come a little bit just to take the edge off there. Okay, so again, I'm not doing too much of this. Again, other images you might want to do a bit more of this stuff on. Okay, but you have to do a little bit smoothing, a little bit feathering, and shift the edge just to make it look a bit more convincing. Okay, so we need to come out of this sort of select and mask workspace now. So at the bottom, okay, it says output 2. Okay, if I click here, if I go to selection, I've got new layer, I've got layer masks. We're going to look at those in a minute, but I would say new layer is going to be more useful to us. Okay, so if I click on new layer, and go to OK. Yeah, and then I've got the layers panel, so you can see now it's committed to that change. Okay, it's got my checkered background, which is in transparency, but it's done a new layer look, but the one's still under here. So if I turn that off, turn that on, you can see I've still got the original layer there. Okay, so I turn that on, turn that off now. So if I were going to drop this into INDESIGN or any other software, it would just be the model and this would be transparent. Okay, so you could run text around it or whatever you wanted to. So that is kind of resolved. Now, to use it with the transparent background though, what we need to do is save it. Okay, so I'm going to go to save as. So we're no longer using a JPEG. Okay, you can see I brought it in as a JPEG, this image, but the moment I start to layer it up and put transparency in, to keep that I need to save it as Photoshop. Okay, if I did swap it to a different file format, it would just flatten it and it would be a white background. Okay, so I'm going to go to PSD. Okay, I'll change it there, so I'll put there suit and save. And I'll just click OK on this one to make sure the quality is going to be perfect, and that is then done. Okay, so we can bring that into INDESIGN. That's fine. So and if I come to here, so let's say I want to kind of make this a part of another document. Let's say I want to do like a page with multiple images on, a bit of a montage or a mood board type thing. Okay, I'm going to make a new Photoshop document and I can basically put this into it and merge it with other things as well. Okay, so if I go File, New, and I'm going to go to Print. I'm going to keep it quite simple. I'll go on Presets and I'll just do like an A4 page. Let's say we're doing like an A4 poster or A4 page that's going to be dropped into a part of another document, maybe A4, and click Create. Right, so now I've got Image and New Document. So to get this one across, dead easy. I could choose it with my Move tool. Okay, just have it selected. I could just go to Edit, copy and paste it across, or you can just drag it, come up to that new tab, bring it down and drop it in there like that. Okay, and then we start to get layers in here. So with this document now, I can, as long as I've got the transform controls ticked on up here, if I don't have that turned on, I don't get these handles, but I'll turn that on and I can change the size. With a delay here, I don't think it likes it when I'm recording the screen. Okay, so you can change the size. Okay, you can rotate. Yeah, and just double click to commit to that. You can also duplicate it. So within here, I could choose the layer, right click, duplicate layer. Okay, or again, another really quick shortcut is when you're moving something, if you press the Alt key and then you move it, it'll copy it there. So you can do multiple copies of this if you wanted to. Let's just bring in another picture then. So we could do the same thing like we just did. We could cut an image out and bring it in like this. But if we just want to bring a picture straight in and just crop it or apply it to this bit here, we can do that as well. So if I go to, I don't need to open the image in Photoshop, I can just import it straight in, a little bit like INDESIGN really, but we're not going to create a link, it kind of embeds it into this document. So I'm going to go to File, I'm going to go to Place Embedded. Okay, let's choose another picture, so this one. Okay, so this puts it in, I can change the size, double click, yeah, Okay, and that's in this document. And you can see now, if you're not used to layers, you can start to get the gist of them now. Look, so you can bring things up and down. So this one's in front, bring it right down here, and then it's behind like that. Okay, now I can start to move these, get these out of the way a little bit here. Obviously this image isn't cut out at all. Okay, so I could cut it out with select subject and like we did before, but let's say I just want to crop it to a different shape in here. I'm going to utilize masks now. So masks can get quite complicated, but we can do them quite simple as well. So let's just say I want to have this image in a circle. I might go my circle selection tool, click and drag. Okay, I might want to hold shift to keep it in proportion. Okay, make sure I've got that layer selected. Now within my layers, at the bottom, there's numerous little buttons here, but there's this one here, which is a layer mask. Okay, so I've got a selection and that layer selected, click on that and it just crops it down to that particular shape. I can move it around like this. Okay, now what it's done, it hasn't deleted that content. Okay, it's just sort of, it's like a little window through to it. It's just hidden the other part. So you can see here, it's very small this, but that's the mask. So if you imagine that's dropped on top of here, the little hole is what we're seeing. Okay. So the good thing about this though, it's not permanent. Okay, it's what's referred to as a non-destructive edit. So that means I can undo it or redo it, which is really useful because obviously the nature of designing things like this is you're going to change your mind and want to retry different things. Okay, so let's say I don't want it to be cropped anymore. I can literally grab the mask, drop it there, look, and it goes back again. Okay, let's do Control and Z to get it back there. I could right click on the mask and disable it. Okay, so it's still there, but I've just disabled it. Right click and enable it again. Now what is useful though, between these two parts, excuse me, I've got the layer here and I've got the mask here, so you can see they're two sort of separate things. Okay, and they're linked with this little chain, so that means I can move them around together. Okay, and I can make them bigger or smaller together as well, like this. But if I just click on that chain, it unlinks them. Look, click on the layer and I can sort of re-crop it like that. Look, move it around, link it again, it comes back in. Okay, let's just put another picture in as well. So that works better if you just might want to crop it to a different square. File and place embedded. Excuse me. So let's choose a different picture, say this one. So we've got another picture here. Double click on it. I might want to crop that to just a rectangle or square. Choose that. Choose the image and crop it. I might drop that one at the back. Like this. Okay. So all of this, look, again, is kind of undoable. I could get rid of the mask here. I could change the stacking order. Okay. In fact, let me just delete that layer here. So we can do, that's what's called masking. Okay, so we can get a bit more complex with masking, but I'll kind of leave it at that for now because that's the kind of quite an easy way to get into it here. Because it's a non-destructive, non-permanent thing that we're doing, which is really key to using Photoshop efficiently. So let's look at bringing in some effects. Okay, so we can start to add things to these layers. Okay, within our layers panel. Okay, we've got effects down here. We can add. We can also start to add additional layers which are called adjustment layers, which are these ones here. Okay, so I'm just going to show you how to do these. So again, I'm just kind of introducing you to these things here. I'm not going to go through every single one. I'm just going to show you how to add a couple, how to remove them, and how to adjust them. And obviously you can just experiment with them yourself because there's so many different options here really. I'm just kind of opening them up so you can have a good explore with them. So let's say I just want to add something to this particular layer. Okay, so there's this one here, I've got it selected. I've got effects down here, look, all this stuff I can add. But to get to these, I can do it a little bit quicker. Up here, if I double click on the layer, okay, and then it comes up with all the effects. So it's pretty much the same as going down here, just a little bit quicker. So these are my effects, and I can apply as many of these as I want to this layer. I wouldn't recommend doing all of them. Again, I'm sure you've probably seen people get a bit a bit carried away with Photoshop effects, but say used subtly, they can be quite nice. You might want something like a little drop shadow. Okay, turn that on. Now the good thing about these is when you turn it there, if you click on the word drop shadow, these are all the settings for that. Okay, and again you can adjust every part of everything in Photoshop. Probably more control than you're ever going to need or use, to be honest, but we could change, like say that's a bit dark, so I might want to change the distance. Okay, the spread, which kind of brings it in a little bit, I want it to be a bit more subtle there, size of it, opacity, how transparent it is. Okay. You've got the colour, so I'm going to change the colour of that as well. Okay, so you can add all this stuff to really adjust it and make it look good. I could even grab it and move it myself on the page if I wanted to, but so I probably wouldn't want to do that. Let's keep it there. Let's add a couple more though, just so we can see what's happening. Let's say stroke. We want to have a coloured stroke around the outside of it. Again, we can change the size of that stroke there, the opacity of it, the colour of it. You can change by clicking there again, changing the colour. Okay. I'll do one more colour overlay. Click on there again. Colour of it there. You can change that colour. Yeah, you can change the blend mode. I'm going to look at blend modes in shortly. Actually, the way it kind of merges. So this is the colour overlay and different effects to put on there. So there's a lot to play about with. Okay, so I'm going to let you have a good look through all these yourself. So I'm just going to click OK, so you can see what happened. Right. So within here, we've got all the things that I've added. Look, okay, so this layer now, okay, I've got the image layer itself, which I imported. I've got a layer mask, which is what's cropping it to my circle, and I've got all these effects attached to it as well. Okay, so I can turn these off, turn them on, turn one off at a time. I could double click on it, or double click on that bit, sorry, there, look, and it comes back to here, so I can adjust everything again, or cancel that. Okay. So it's all completely adjustable. I can hide and show them as well, and you can also, you could drag the effects onto a different layer. So I want to have the same effect, excuse me, on this layer here. If I grab the effect button or the logo, drop it there, look, and it swaps it to that layer. I'll swap it back again. I can also, if you remember earlier, I pressed the Alt key to duplicate the layer. If I press the Alt key, I can also duplicate the effect onto a different layer instead of moving it. Yeah. Okay, so let's put that here. So these are the effects. Okay, so that is essentially this button at the bottom here. Okay, so we've done the masking button and we've done this button. So there's one more I want to look at, which is the adjustment layer. Okay, and these for, again, if I click on here, you can see the list of things. So I'll just go through a few of them again, so you're comfortable adding and deleting them. But you've got sort of a bit of a sort of practical section, I suppose, which is this bit here, which is brightness, contrast, levels, curves, etc. We've got a bit more extreme effects here, like hue and saturation, black and white, photo filters, okay, and then some more down here as well. Okay. I'll just go through a few of them and show you what they do, and you can say, once you understand how they work, you can experiment with them yourself. Right. Okay, so I'm going to choose the top layer, click on here, look, and if I go to, let's say, brightness and contrast, the properties panel changes, look, to be to do with this adjustment, brightness, contrast. Okay, it's adjusting everything on this document. Now, it's adjusting everything because it's at the top. Okay, so with this at the top, if I bring it down, so it's affecting everything underneath here. So let me bring it down a couple of steps. Let's bring it down to this one. Look. So you can see now it's not affecting that one or that one, but it is affecting these three. Drag it down again. Only affecting that one and not anything else, just this layer. Look. Okay, so you can see where that's positioned in the stacking order dictates what it applies to. Okay. And again, I can double click on here anytime and adjust it. But what we can do is attach it to a single layer. So let me bring it down here. Okay, so let's say I want it applied just to this layer here. Okay, so I'll put it directly on top of that layer. Okay, I'll choose the layer. I can go to here and I can go to create clipping mask. Okay, so let me do that again. So this layer, the one underneath, so what I'm going to do is attach it just to this layer. So choose the layer. I can actually right click and do it as well, I think. Create clipping mask. Okay. And you can see you get a little arrow there. It's just applying to that single one there. Okay, we can do other adjustment layers. Let's look at what else have we got? We could do things like gradient map. They're quite cool if we do a gradient map. Okay, so you can see again at the top, it's kind of recolored it all with this colour, and again in the properties, look, obviously the last gradient map I did must have been pink, so it's choosing that one again, but I can change these colours. So if I click on this bar here, and we have two colours within here, so I could double click on that one to change that one there. So put in another, double click on here, make this a completely different colour there, look, so you can see the background, the white areas going, so you get some really pretty cool effects going here. You can add some more in, some more steps to this. Oh, I messed that up, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, let's double click on that one. Okay, so you see you can really mess about with this and get some cool effects with a gradient map. Click OK. And again, the gradient map's at the top, so it's applying it to everything. But let's just want to apply it to one here. Oh, I've actually put it inside that clipping mask there, which I want to put it down, say there. Okay, so it's just applying to everything underneath here, but again, choose that, right click, create clipping mask, it's just applying to that one then. You can do some nice ones in here as well. If I click here, so this is probably something you want to do with the whole thing. You've got what's called a color lookup. Okay, if I do that one, and within here, look, there's like lots of sort of preset camera effects, which could be quite cool. So if I come to soft warming look, you see the left. In fact, let me do it on another image so you can see it better. Let's open something else. Let's say open this one. Okay, so we might see a bit better what. So this might be more filters that you put on an overall image rather than a document made of different layers. So let's go to color lookup. Choose some different ones. Bleach by pastel. Okay, so quite cool. Candlelight. Again, it's just an overall look and feel that it changes, which is really cool. So it's quite subtle to them. It just gives a real good sort of atmosphere to the images. But say dead simple. Look, all down there. Color lookup, and put them on there. Okay. Right. Let's come back to my document here. So I want to look at, let's look at, just briefly look at filters. So then you've got a lot to experiment with here. Okay, so you can see in my layers panel, it's getting quite complicated quite quickly, isn't it? So we've got adjustment layers. So the key to Photoshop really, certainly working in this way, is understanding what's going on in here. Okay, so if I turn off that layer, that's my adjustment. I've got the image that I've just brought in, file, place embedded with the mask. Another layer, I've got another adjustment layer which I've created a clipping layer to this one, look there, and this one. Okay. But say all of this is kind of non-destructive, so I can turn off the layer masks, I can adjust my adjustment layers, look, so it's all completely changeable. Okay. But let me just look at one more thing, we'll look at some filters. Again, I'll just show you one or two and you can have an experiment with them. If I go to, let's say, let's zoom in a bit here. Okay. Go to filter, What shall I do? Let's look at, let's see, pixelate, colour halftone. This guy gives like a nice sort of dot effect, like a traditional sort of print effect. And again, you can play about with these settings, but I'd probably go for, let's see, the radius is the size of these circles. Let's say 14. Try something, but again, I'm just sort of random numbers here. If I put all these the same, though, this is how we get this effect. So click OK. So you've got the sort of posterized effect with this sort of half-tone, colour half-tone thing there. I could even put on that, it could be like a little background part here, so this could go behind, something like that. Okay, that's pretty cool. We could also combine these things. Okay, I could combine this with a gradient map. So let's try, let's do a gradient map on top of that. So that's pretty cool. And again, that gradient map might just want to be attached to just that layer there. So choose the layer, right click, and create a clipping mask there. Again, you get these different effects. Yeah. So again, you can see by using all this stuff, you can get some pretty cool stuff going on. Okay. So hopefully that's given you a good introduction to Photoshop. Okay. Right. So does if you just want to put in the chat then,